For months, one of the best golfers in the world stood alone. Every other European LIV player folded, paid up, and fell in line. Jon Rahm refused. He called out the DP World Tour publicly, rejected their conditions, and risked his place at the Ryder Cup to make a point. It became one of the most fascinating standoffs in modern golf, a two-time major champion against the entire European Tour establishment. Here's the full story of how it happened, what he said, and how it ended. To understand why Jon Rahm was so angry, you have to understand the trap he was caught in, because it was a genuinely difficult situation, with no clean way out. When Rahm left for LIV Golf in late 2023, signing a contract reported to be worth over $300 million, he did not fully cut ties with the European game. He retained his DP World Tour membership, which matters enormously for one specific reason: the Ryder Cup. To be eligible to play for Team Europe, a golfer must be a member of the DP World Tour in good standing and play a minimum number of its events each year. For Rahm, who is one of the emotional and competitive cornerstones of the European team, maintaining that eligibility was non-negotiable. But there was a problem. Every time a LIV player competes in a LIV event that conflicts with a DP World Tour tournament, he breaches the tour's regulations and accrues a fine. For the first couple of years, LIV Golf simply paid those fines on behalf of its players, absorbing the cost as part of doing business. Then, in 2026, with the league's finances collapsing, LIV stopped paying. Suddenly the sanctions hit the players' own pockets, and the entire calculus changed. The DP World Tour offered a resolution. In February of 2026, 8 European LIV players, including Tyrrell Hatton, agreed to what was called a conditional release. The terms required them to pay all their outstanding fines, withdraw any pending appeals, and play a stipulated number of DP World Tour events, with the tour itself dictating some of where they had to play. In exchange, they could continue competing on LIV without accruing new penalties. 8 players signed, 1 refused. Jon Rahm was the only one who said no. Quick pause. If you respect Jon Rahm for standing his ground against the DP World Tour when everyone else caved, type respect in the comments. If you think he was being stubborn over something he was always going to have to accept, type just pay it. I read every single one. Rahm's objections were specific, and he aired them publicly in a way that turned a private contract dispute into a very public call-out. Speaking at LIV Golf Hong Kong, he made his frustration plain. He said he did not like what the tour was doing with the contract they were asking him to sign, and that he did not like the conditions. His biggest issue was the structure of the requirement. He objected to being asked to play a minimum of 6 events, while the tour dictated where 2 of those events had to be. The loss of control was what bothered him. He was being told not just how many tournaments to play, but which specific ones, layered on top of his 13 LIV events and the 4 majors. It was, in his view, an unreasonable imposition on how he managed his own schedule. There was also a deeper principle at work, one Rahm returned to repeatedly. He lamented that he was being fined for missing tournaments he had never committed to and never intended to play in the first place. From his perspective, the entire fine structure punished him for choices about his own career that should have been his to make. He believed in his position strongly enough to risk the consequences, and the consequences were not small. By not resolving the dispute, Rahm jeopardized his Ryder Cup eligibility. He did not earn Race to Dubai points at the Masters because he had breached the regulations by not paying his fines. He appeared genuinely willing to carry the standoff into the following season, even if it threatened his place at the 2027 Ryder Cup at Adair Manor in Ireland, an event he is widely expected to be central to. For months, the golf world watched a 2-time major champion, seemingly prepared to sacrifice one of the most meaningful competitions of his career over a matter of principle. And then the landscape shifted underneath everyone. In late April and early May of 2026, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund announced it would stop funding LIV Golf after the 2026 season, declaring that the substantial investment required was no longer consistent with its strategy. The league Rahm had chosen was suddenly fighting for its survival. LIV had been burning through an estimated $100 million a month, around $6 billion since its inception in 2021. Yasir Al-Rumayyan, the PF governor who created LIV and chaired its board, stepped down from that chairman role. The league hired restructuring experts at Alex Partners. The future was genuinely uncertain. In that context, holding out over scheduling conditions to protect a LIV career suddenly made far less sense. It would have been a bitter irony for Rahm to miss the 2027 Ryder Cup because of a dispute tied to a league whose own future was now in serious doubt. It is worth pausing on just how isolated Rahm's position was during those months, because it speaks to the kind of competitor he is. 8 of his fellow European LIV players looked at the same offer and signed it. Tyrrell Hatton, his Ryder Cup partner and close friend, signed it. Players like Thomas Detry, Adrian Moronk, Victor Perez, and others all accepted the conditional releases, calculating that paying the fines and playing the required events was simply the cost of keeping their options open. Rahm alone refused. He was, for months, the single holdout among the European contingent, a man willing to stand entirely alone, on a point of principle that everyone else had decided was not worth fighting over. Whether that reflects admirable conviction or stubborn pride is a matter of perspective, but it is unmistakably characteristic of a player who has never been comfortable being told what to do by anyone. On May 5, 2026, the standoff ended. Rahm and the DP World Tour reached an agreement. He settled all his outstanding fines, believed to be somewhere under $3 million, and agreed to play a set number of DP World Tour events for the rest of the season. His minimum was prorated from 6 events down to 5, a small concession reflecting that he had already been sanctioned for 3 conflicting tournaments. Crucially, his Ryder Cup eligibility was restored. He became once again a member in good standing. What Rahm said when it was over revealed the man's pride as much as his relief. He framed it not as a surrender but as a negotiation in which both sides moved. "There is no longer a standoff," he said. He explained that there were things he believed in that he wanted the tour to agree with, and that he always knew it was a matter of time. He described offering concessions himself while the tour extended an olive branch, characterizing the resolution as mutual, rather than a defeat. He insisted he had never been worried about the Ryder Cup, that he understood the tour had its bylaws and procedures to follow, and that things were simply never as fast as he would have liked. It was the language of a man determined to walk away from a long fight with his dignity intact. And on the question of his LIV future, with his contract reportedly running several more years even as the league teeters, Rahm offered one of the most honest and self-aware lines of the entire saga. Asked about his contractual situation, he admitted he was not a lawyer and had no idea how it would play out, joking that he had very few talents in life and that reading a contract or understanding business were not among them. It was a rare moment of disarming humility from a player who had spent months projecting absolute certainty. The Jon Rahm standoff with the DP World Tour is in the end a story about a proud champion who refused to be told what to do, fought the establishment longer than anyone else dared, and then read the changing landscape and made a deal before his principles cost him something he genuinely could not afford to lose. He called them out, he held his ground. And when the ground shifted, he found a way to win back what mattered, his place at the Ryder Cup, without ever admitting he had lost. Whether you see it as stubbornness or strength depends on your view of Rahm himself. But there is no denying that for months, one man stood against an entire tour and made them come to the table. That is not nothing, and it is exactly the kind of competitive defiance that has defined Jon Rahm's entire career. If this laid out the full saga for you, drop a like before you scroll away. It tells the algorithm to push this to other golf fans following the story. And subscribe, because this one is still developing, and there is more to come.